Hey guys, hope everybody's doing good. I'm Rob, I'm a violin and viola teacher, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about improv and how to come up with different ideas for improvising. Before we get started with the video, please like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. It helps with the algorithm. And so in this video we're going to talk about a little bit about improvising. So I found that when people start improvising over the weeks and months and years, you can get to these points where you'll think of some stuff to play. Like for example, if you're in a band and you're playing a lot, you're playing, once a month or twice a month, you can kind of start playing your songs, but at some point you start to sort of plateau and you start to kind of sound the same. And then maybe you get sort of a little bit of inspiration, and then maybe you get some different stuff, but then you sort of plateau again. And this sort of happens when you go plateau, go plateau, go plateau, right? So the idea is that eventually I solo what is called the toolbox way. And what that means is that you're going to come up with a whole bunch of different little things you can do in your solo, little like tools you can use. And so, for example, one thing on this job is a hammer, right? You might use a hammer here, but it's not going to work on this job. A screwdriver is needed for this job. So your idea is that you have so many different kinds of little ditties and things you can use, and then you just sort of plug and play, right, into the different songs. In a ballad, for example, you're going to use certain things. In other songs, you're going to use different things, right? So the idea is for at the beginning, you're not going to be able to do this very well. You're going to have like, I'm joking, but like 10 or 20 things that you can kind of think to do. But over the time and over the years, you're going to want to get like 100, 200, 300 things that you can do. So that, and the point is so that every solo doesn't sound the same, right? So you can really adjust your playing not only to the certain song you're doing, but also if you do like a bunch of shuffles in a row, that they don't all sound exactly the same, right? So there's a bunch of different ways that you can think to do this. So one of the biggest things that I found when people start screwing around with songs is rhythm, right? A lot of people focus on the notes a lot, but when they really switch around their rhythms, that really helps a lot. We have, whole notes, half notes, eighths, quarters, sixteenths. But the thing that a lot of people forget about is using triplets, right? And I'll demonstrate these here in a minute. But really switch up your rhythms a lot. A lot of people try to kind of sit there and do the swing beat or do kind of quarters and eighths at the beginning because they can't really think of anything else. But really adding triplets in really helps. Plus, doing some syncopated rhythms really helps, right? So let me sort of demonstrate that here. So I'm going to play a Black Orpheus, sort of a famous sort of jazz standard. So I'm going to play a little bit of that and sort of demonstrate the syncopated thing and the triplets. So you play your kind of normal sounds, and then if you throw in that triplet, it's going to sound so different from the other stuff. And definitely if you keep playing like what's called on the beat, right, on those big beats, and then you throw in that da dee da dee da dee da dee da da dee dee, right? If you throw in all of those like syncopated kind of stuff, it can really, screw around your rhythm to make it sound really, really cool. So another spot that a lot of people sort of focus on is, of course, the notes. And there's all sorts of different things that you could do with notes. So we have, a lot of times, especially for classical people, we start on these scales and you sort of like go up and down the scale over and over and over, right? So let's say you have like your E blues. And you just go up, down, right? Well, one thing that you can do with that is you can actually do some jumps. Right, and I'll demonstrate all of these here in a second. You can sort of jump around. Don't always keep going up and down the scale, you know, it's sort of boring. And then also using string crossings. Right, as soon as you start jumping around, it'll sound really different from the scale stuff. And one thing that's really interesting is if you jump around a lot, but then you go back to your scale stuff might actually sound really, really good because it's going to sound so different from the jumping around. Another thing that you can use a lot of times, and I've been trying to use these a lot in my playing because I haven't been doing it very much, is using arpeggios. Right? Really like screw around with all your arpeggios with your chords. Right? So another thing that you can do also that's really interesting with these is you can actually go out of key. Right? So again, the idea is that you want to switch around all the stuff you're doing. Well, let's say a whole bunch of your solo is super like in key. Let's say it's like a gospel tune or something and you're playing a lot of major, right? A lot of major scales and it sounds really nice. This will work really well in something like jazz, but when you're sitting there in your major key and you sit there, or let's say you have your regular minor key and then you throw in one really odd note that actually doesn't sound good, if you resolve it in the right way, you can sort of get away with playing a note that's out of key, right? This whole concept works also with rhythm, and I'll demonstrate this here in a second. But if you're sitting here really like locked down in the pocket really hard, as soon as you come out and do like sort of an out of time thing, and then you come back in time, it can sound really, really good. And so this works on the idea of opposites, right? So we sit here in key and then we use out of key, right? Sit there in time and then use out of time. And then as soon as you come back in time, it sounds so good because it's like locked in, right? So let me demonstrate and I'll call out which ones I'm doing. You can see how these all fit in the song. I'll use the same song again. Arpeggios. String crossings. Went out of key there. Here's the rhythm one. Out of key, out of time. Right, so you could hear I kind of went through every one of those little examples and used those things in my improv. I went out of key for a couple notes, and then when I slipped back in there, you almost didn't even notice that I went out of key there. All right, I think I did a little chromatic thing there, right? Right, well right, those two notes didn't sound very good in the key, but when I put it with all the other good notes, it sort of sounded good again. And you use that out of time. This is one that I use a lot where I'll do that big, you know, like when you have like a a septuplet, like where you have, or whatever it's called, where you have like 7 notes and you're going up to this note. I use that one a lot, where you have to kind of squish it all in and it's not really in a perfect time. Right, where I kind of fit all those in. I don't know that, I mean, I wasn't trying to play that in time or out of time, but when you squeeze all that in, it sounds really different than the really locked down rhythm that you had. Another couple of things you can think about, not just with the notes and the rhythms, but all the other parts of music, right? Definitely doing something like slurs. Right, and going back and forth between slur and not slur, slur or not slur, right? That can really kind of switch around your playing. Dynamics is a really easy one, pretty self-explanatory. Like especially in another video, I talked about soloing and how you can start soft and get louder. Can really make your solo sound different. Another really good one is articulation, right? So for us as string players, we can really utilize our spiccato, right? Right? Where there I went to sort of a staccato, where it's a very stopped sound, right, on the string, and then you can use spiccato, you know, so I'll demonstrate 2 seconds of that, how that could sound in this song. Slur. Staccato. Right? So you can really screw around with your different articulations, can make it sound really good. I'll skip rest for a second. With sound effects, you can use little stuff like slides. Right? You can kind of slide into it, use your... I use this as a comping thing a lot, the tremolos, right? When I want to just put some like sound underneath somebody singing. Trills is another one. Right? You can use those kind of sound effects. If you're locked down on the tempo a lot, that's one thing that you can kind of do is lock down the tempo, and when you start doing tremolos and trills especially, you can definitely use that'll kind of like screw around with the rhythm sort of, right? Because you're not playing any specific rhythm with that. So that can make it sound really, really different rhythm-wise. But with slides, one really interesting thing is I'll do maybe a whole section of my solo sometimes where I'll just use like all slides, and it'll sound sort of over the top, but when I get to the other spot when I don't use slides, it'll really like cut, you know, with somebody understanding. And you can, and sometimes I'll go like a ways with using slides. So here we'll use the same one again. So you could hear that I did a number of slides in there. I went like almost overboard. I did almost too many maybe, but then when I cut back in with the regular, it sounded pretty nice. So 2 more left. I'll come back to this one. Emotions is another thing that you can do as well. Is you can think of, like, for example, on that song, sometimes I might try like a very pain-filled thing, or I might try it very like sensual and like almost sexy or something, you know, as much sexy as I'm going to be able to do. But I might literally say that in my head, like try to like make this romantic sounding or something, and that can like jog my memory, jog my ideas of how to like manipulate my bow to make it sound a little bit more. Make it sound a certain way. So you can always use certain emotions, like playing sad, angry, sexy, romantic, happy. You know, you can use any kind of scared is another good one. All right. So that's another one that you can kind of, you know, or you could think of. Obviously, you could go endless with that thing. Think of like a landscape and try to play that. Right. Imagine you're in a park. Right. Imagine you're in a grassy area with animals around, or something. I mean, imagine mountains. You know. So you can imagine any kind of place in your head and try to match that with your emotion and your bow and things, and that can help jog you. Last one I'm going to discuss with you guys is using rests. So this gets back to the whole idea of the rhythm. So one thing that you can do, and this may be hard to explain without it sort of written out, but a lot of times if we use rests, that can really like jog our memory or jog our brain into not just playing endlessly, because this happens a lot when people start improving, and especially for us playing stringed instruments, is we don't have to sit there and breathe. This is really easy for horn players because they have to, you know, I mean, they have to take that breath, but guitar, piano, bass, violin, you know, there's all these instruments that we don't ever have to take a breath. We can just keep going and going and going. So using rests can really help you make phrases, right? And so with the phrases and the rhythm, one thing that you can do is a lot of times when people start using rests, they start coming back in on the same like beat, right? So sometimes they might start on, like, for example, beat 1 of a thing. Right? So what I'll do is I'll demonstrate coming in on beat 1 every single time. But the other thing that you can do is you can come back in on a different beat, right? So on like beat 3, for example, or have a little pickup beat 4 into a measure. And then all of a sudden that can screw around your rhythms too. So let me demonstrate that. Use the same one again. On the beat. Rest, 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 rest. 1, 2, 3. There I came in. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4, 1, 2. Right? So what I was doing was sometimes I was coming in like right on the beat 1. Other times I was coming in again on a on beat, on like beat 3, beat 4, beat 2, whatever. But then other times I was also coming in on an and, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So like 1, 2, 3, ba da da dee. That time I came in on the and of 3, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, bam ba. There was the and of 4 that time. So coming in on these different beats is another way that you can really screw around with your rhythm to make your stuff kind of be schmaltzy, right? And really and this is definitely a way that you can deal with your syncopated problem, right? And not just come in on downbeats all the time. But use rests is another one to be able to. I found that with using phrasing, that helps you come out with melodies a little better instead of just kind of meandering notes. When you use little like kind of snippet phrases or like riffs where you have like a 5-note little thing, 8-note little thing, it allows you to help you kind of jog your brain to come up with some more like kind of melody sounds rather than a whole bunch of random notes, you know. So those are some ideas that I had for different things that you could practice. And so a way to practice this is just pick one of these things, right? So like pick arpeggios and try to do a solo with a whole bunch of arpeggios just to practice that. Pick any of these. Spiccato, right? You do a whole solo where you do a lot of rests, right? Do a solo where you add a bunch of slides, etc., jumping around. Right, so there's a whole bunch, you can use any of these and use these as a practice tool of just pick one of these and do a solo so you can actually practice adding different things in. And then add two of them maybe. Do like jumps and whatever, rests, right? Just pick two of them and try to put both of those into your solo in some place, right? So that's a little bit of what I like to do when I'm improvising, is I really think of a lot of different kinds of things. And the last thing I'll say is that a lot of this kind of stuff is easily, if you're an orchestra player, you've done all of this stuff, right? And in different songs, you've used a bunch of these things. So the idea is that it's in there, right? Think of it like a bank, all those little bank vaults, right? It's like all of this stuff. A lot of times if you've played a lot, you've done spiccato before, right? You've done trills before, right? You've jumped around or you've used arpeggios, you've played scale stuff. It's in there, it's in your head. You just have it, it's just that the lockbox is locked. You just need to open it. It's already in the bank, right? It's already in your head. So kind of use this as a framework. This is, not all of the things you can do, of course, but these are a good start. So I would try some of this stuff and see what happens. So there you go, guys. That's some different things you can do for your improv. So I'll be back with some more videos talking about some more improv kind of techniques, and I have different tutorial videos on dynamics and bowing and technique and stuff, so go check those out on my channel. I have stuff of me, clips of me playing, and I have a whole interview show where I interview a bunch of musicians, so if you want to, go check some of those out, and that's what I got for you. Alrighty, see you guys later.